proudest moment. 21st century's yesterday. You can care all you want. Everybody does, yeah, that's okay. So slide over here and give me a moment. Your moves are so raw. I've got to let you know. I've got to let you know. You're one of my kind.
Who doesn't love Thug Rose and Pat Barry? Filthy fucking animals, that's who. Pat Barry's a joker in the pack, while Thug Rose is a UFC darling. And it's impossible to tell the story of one without the other. In 2008, Pat Barry made his UFC debut. He had only 3 pro fights. He started MMA at 29, and he was almost entirely one-dimensional. However, that one dimension was quite fucking formidable. Barry began his career in Sanshu and kickboxing, and despite throwing his first proper punch at 23, he took to it like a fish to fucking water. Pat was something of a striking prodigy and a genetic freak, a stocky powder keg of fast-twitch dynamite, ready to explode with power punches and, most memorably of all, crippling fucking leg kicks.
The dude is a Mozart. The dude put on a pair of gloves and within a couple months was as good as his first coach.
Hey, Drew, how far do you think I can get?
You can get to the 20.
To the 20?
Yeah. I'm gonna get 3 and then fall out dead like that fight camp. Come on, bro.
Based on some early performances in front of kickboxing royalty, the greatest K1 heavyweight of all time, Ernesto Hoost, he was invited to hone his skills on Team Mr. Perfect in Holland. Now that's ground zero, heavyweight kickboxing mecca. Between 2002 and 2008, he compiled a decent record at a relatively high level. He also competed in Chuck Norris' Wacky Fucking Fight League, whatever the fuck it was called. In 2008, and now under the tutelage of Duke Rufus, he decided to transition to MMA, citing the recent Ultimate Fighter-inspired MMA boom as the reason. Now, although his kickboxing career never quite reached the highest levels, when he brought that pedigree over to MMA, all of a sudden it was like taking candy from a fucking baby.
Making his professional debut.
You know who I am. You know what I am. MMA is the wave of the future. This is where it's at. I was 0-0 in MMA versus a guy named Mike Delaney who was like 28-12. He had something like 40 or 50 MMA fights, pro fights. And I kicked him in the leg 3 times in a minute.
He kicked so hard.
And he laid on the ground and said, please no more.
I think he broke his knee.
My second MMA fight, I fight a guy with 75 professional kickboxing matches, bell rings.
Ooh, nice powerful kick.
I kick him in the leg twice, and he lays on the ground and says, no more. Big check. I was like, what? This is Christmas. Third fight, I fight a guy who's got like 60 pro fights. I look straight at his leg and throw a high kick. 1 second knockout. I threw 6 kicks, 3 fights, more money than I've ever made in my entire life.
Barry likes to throw right low kicks.
Forward. That's the huge leg kick. Nasty leg kicks.
I gave him 3 really nasty low kicks.
There's the leg kick again.
Man, he's hurt. He's hurt.
It's over!
And the last one collapsed his knee inwards. He just turns around and says, you know what? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I don't need to see how bad this is going to get. I would like to walk for the rest of my life.
He actually made his opponent air tap from getting low kicked. It was a sick low kick.
The high point of his MMA career came early, against former teammate Anthony Hardunk. Hardunk had also been a Team Mr. Perfect, and Barry's departure from the Dutch camp hadn't exactly been amicable, at least from Pat Barry's perspective. He felt Ernesto Hoost never really gave a shit about him, and only used Barry as a sparring partner for other fighters who he truly believed in, like Anthony Hardunk. So there was something like an inferiority complex at play. Pat openly admitted they hadn't been equals.
We weren't equals. It was him and me, and I was looking up to this guy.
Understandably, there was an enormous amount of emotion in his fight. From Pat's perspective, It was kind of about climbing out of their shadow, proving he had been worthy all along, and doing it in the most undeniable of venues, inside the fucking octagon. And that's exactly what happened. After a close first round, Pat found his range, bashed the fuck out of his ass, knocked Hardunk down with a wicked jab, and quickly closed his show. The subsequent outpouring of emotion was unforgettable.
That was the greatest fight of my life.
Huge victory for Pat Barry. Wow, look how emotional Pat Barry is.
Sorry for being a little emotional, but that meant everything in the world to me just now. I'm going home, man.
But there was also another side to this victory. It was almost the validation of his entire life. Pat had been struggling for years. Financially, he was absolutely fucked. Up to his ass in debt, behind in rent, and heading into this fight, he was living an Oliver Twist-style Dickensian nightmare.
A bad business decision left Pat in dire financial straits.
My bank account was zapped, gone, nothing. Everything was coming up. Rent, electricity, cell phone bill, gas. I could have asked Mom for money. But if every time you're about to hit the ground, somebody catches you, there's no reason to work hard.
In the days leading up to the fight, Pat subsisted on a diet of white rice and ketchup.
But against Hardunk, Pat received both Fight of the Night and Knockout of the Night bonuses, a $130,000 payday, and he summed his relief up perfectly with this one sentence.
All the phone calls I've had to make home crying, all the nights I've sat up, strung out, worrying, am I gonna wake up one day at 40 and realize this is all a joke?
I love it. I love that sentence, because that is the worry. That is the nightmare of every person who has ever chased a dream. Every artist, every entrepreneur, every musician, comedian, writer, every fucking fighter. Am I gonna wake up at 40 and my very existence, my entire life is one big fucking joke? I love it. You know, that's the risk you take to chase a fucking dream. The financial implications of the Hardunk fight went a long way to answering that question. $130,000 in one night says no, you're not a fucking joke.
I was able to go home and pay off the hole that I put myself into, put aside some for taxes, and put aside a small part for a retirement plan.
It was a feel-good fight of Pat Barry's life, and it catapulted him into the biggest bout of his career. A fight against Mirko Cro Cop, the waning Pride legend, who looked like he was approaching the end of his career. Now, everyone and their mother, including Pat Barry, and probably Pat Barry's mother, wanted Cro Cop to win that fight. What? Well, maybe not Pat Barry's mother, but everyone else. You know, it's difficult to describe just how loved Cro Cop was at the time. He was one of the first big fighters to have a truly terrifying highlight reel, full of devastating head kick knockouts over some elite competition. Early Cro Cop highlights floating around the internet were responsible for bringing so many new fans into the sport. Every asshole who even had a passing interest in violence knew all about Mirko Cro Cop, a real fan favorite. And nobody was a bigger fanboy than Pat Barry. Most young men got naked ladies hanging on their wall. Pat Barry had posters of Cro Cop.
I had all of the 10,000 highlight videos of him that I've watched on YouTube every day and have memorized, like all of the walkout music that I've memorized. Like, all this means that I'm doing something right. I've done something right, man, and just if I just keep on pushing that, you know, maybe I'll be sitting in this seat one day versus at the end of the table. Like, this is just really unbelievable to me, man.
This was the first time the UFC really pushed Pat Barry as a personality, and he emerged as a likable, lighthearted, happy-go-lucky joker with a wacky sense of humor. It almost seemed like Pat thinks entirely in terms of children's cartoons. You know, most people's minds are a stream of consciousness. Pat Barry's streaming SpongeBob SquarePants.
All I ever wanted to do was be a ninja. That's it. I wanted to be Tong Po from Kickboxer, Sagat from Street Fighter. I idolize these dudes, bro.
I collected weapons, ninja stars, swords, bow staffs. I had them all stashed throughout the house. So, you know, if anybody ever broke into the house, I could, you know, do a roll, flip on the ground, reach behind the sofa, and think and shoot him in the head.
He cracks me up. The guy is just a funny motherfucker.
Have you experienced racism before?
Oh yeah, I'm half black, half white, and sometimes I look Cuban. So like I've been dealing with it like forever from everybody. I told everybody I'm on whoever's side is winning. All right, so if the clan walks in here, I'm a white dude who's been in the sun. If the brothers come through, I live in Minnesota. It snows up there. I mean, and if you start salsa dancing and say I have to or I'm gonna die, it's over with. We better start spinning.
Does he have rhythm?
Oh yeah.
Only when I'm sitting.
I think his big butt kind of like sets off his balance a little bit. So, but yeah, he's got rhythm.
Anyway, a real camaraderie developed between the two fighters, even in a build-up. Pat brought out a seldom-seen side of Crow Cop, a funny, quick-witted entertainer. The rapport was just fucking great.
Yesterday, I do not remember seeing that mark on your forehead. Where did that come from?
It's a delicate question, you know. I had a late training in my room, so a few ladies came and they made us question.
I knew this was sick. Are you okay?
Huh?
Are you okay?
Excuse me?
Does it hurt? Are you okay?
No, I'm okay, but they're not.
All right.
You ask.
Good answer.
If I beat Crow Cop on Saturday night, I'm going to go home and stare out a window for 2 years.
Well, first of all, he's an amazing guy, really decent, and I like the guy. I must say I like the guy. It has nothing to do with our fight. You know, I'll treat him just like any other opponent, but I got to say that I met him yesterday in hotel, we talked, you know, and he's a really nice person, you know. He's a really nice person. And he said that he will, in case of winning, that he will spend 2 years staring to the window, but he also must have one thing on his mind, that in case of lost the fight, if I'm going to be lucky and throw a high kick, he might stare to the window 2 years too. But with the nurse on his left side.
The build-up was great, and so was the fight. Pat came out looking for blood, knocked Crow Cop down twice in the first 2 minutes. But Crow Cop hung in there. He took Barry down in the second and started wearing him out. With 90 seconds left in the fight, Crow Cop opened up on the fading Barry, knocked him down, promptly tapped the fuck out of his ass, and in doing so, he gave most of the MMA world exactly what they wanted. Another chance to see the Pride legend getting his hand raised. Like most fans, I was rooting against Barry in that fight. But that was the last time I did. In the build-up and during a fight, he had revealed himself to be a funny, good-natured, respectful motherfucker. From that point on, I always rooted for Pat Barry. Unfortunately, that wasn't always easy. Those 2 fights were the high point of his career. It was largely downhill after that. His subsequent UFC record consisted mostly of losses, mostly of devastating losses, with a couple wins peppered here and there. There was likely a confluence of factors at play. He came to the sport late. He had physical disadvantages in the heavyweight division. His chin began to let him down. And as we later found out, he was grappling with some serious personal issues. Regardless, one thing became abundantly clear. Although Pat Barry wasn't about to be a joke, he wasn't about to be champion either. However, that didn't mean the door was closing on him ever having a UFC belt in his living room. In that sense, Pat Barry had one more roll of the dice. In fact, the Joker in the pack had a fucking ace up his sleeve.
I need you tonight, 'cause I'm not sleeping. There's something about you, girl, that makes me sweat. over here and give me a moment. Your moves are so raw. I've got to let you know. I've got to let you know. You are my kind.
In 2014, the UFC aired Season 20 of The Ultimate Fighter. The purpose of the show was to launch the women's strawweight division and crown a champion in the process. Among the contestants was Rose Namajunas. Now, some fans were already familiar with Rose from her outstanding performances on Pat's YouTube page and a 12-second flying armbar that caught the MMA world by surprise. But this gave us our first real look at the woman behind the masterpiece that is Sexy Blizzard. Now, I don't want to fawn too much, but you gotta state the obvious here. The first thing that struck viewers was the fact that Rose is just fucking gorgeous. And so there was a slight worry, as can be the case with beautiful women, is she gonna open her mouth and spoil the whole fucking thing? But the exact opposite happened. She opened up and it was hard not to love her. The girl is a fucking sweetheart. Rose grew up in a concrete jungle. I mean, she's seen some shit. Fights, stabbings, shootings, mental illness, and most heartbreaking of all, sexual abuse.
My nickname is Thug Rose, and obviously that's, the persona that I have in the cage, and that's kind of, comes from my past. Growing up in Milwaukee, I've seen a lot of violence, and I've been, sexually harassed all my life. So seeing all of that, I've always been used to looking over my shoulder and always trying to put that intimidating look on my face. And then also, when somebody's abusing you, they make you feel like it's your fault, and they use tactics to make you feel guilty and make you feel like you deserve it when you don't. There's a lot of kids out there that are probably thinking that it's their fault that they're being abused and not really knowing who to go to. And there's always somebody to go to. There's always somebody that can help you. You don't have to take it on yourself. I live with that secret for up until right before the show. And I finally told somebody about it. But you don't have to keep it a secret. You can open up to somebody and you can get out of that situation if you can do it.
But rather than succumbing to inner city dysfunction, she was striving to reject that bullshit and desired a simpler life more in tune with nature.
On top of being a fighter and martial arts just being my first love, I also love the outdoors and I love nature. And our teachers used to ask us when we were little, like in kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what I said was, I want to be a farmer. Silly as that sounds, I still have a true passion for nature and animals, and I think that kind of fits well with fighting too, because it brings out the animal side of me.
Thug also had a mature fight philosophy that can elude a lot of young fighters, especially from troubled backgrounds.
A lot of the times in the past I fought with hate and more of the dark side energy type of stuff. Anger and frustration that you go into a fight with can definitely get you far, but you kind of just get burnt out on that. And right now I'm in a better state of mind, and I'm just really looking forward to fighting, not because I'm angry, but because I'm just really looking forward to punching somebody in the face.
So despite her background, and contrary to her moniker, Rose is a thug in nickname only. In reality, she's a martial artist and a total fucking sweetheart. Obviously, Rose doesn't fit the literary definition of a noble savage, not unless she got a wigwam I don't know about. But I am going to appropriate the phrase for Thug Rose, because as a catchy combination of words, it fits her perfectly, and you don't have to warp the literary definition too much. Although she grew up in a concrete jungle, she wasn't corrupted by the utter clusterfuck of dysfunction around her, and she yearns for a simpler, wilder lifestyle more in touch with nature. The fact that Rose is putting an end to a cycle of abuse and turning dysfunction into function, to me, does represent humanity's innate goodness. What is more good than taking negativity and turning it into positivity? The girl is a noble fucking savage. It was easy to root for her, and if you did, you weren't disappointed. She was easily the most exciting competitor on the show, a technical fighter, especially on the ground, but wild and super creative. Oh, she came to fucking fight. Her philosophy appeared to be to try to be the storm her opponents simply could not weather.
I'm always going to go for it. I'm never going to conserve myself. I can't hold back my creativity. That's my advantage. That's how I, mess people up. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good job. I have this carefree mentality where, just risk it all. It's worth the risk.
And watching that philosophy unfold in the cage was the highlight of the show. All 3 fights played out in a similar fashion. Rose dragged her opponents into a wild gunfight, walking them down with a combination of both creative and technical strikes and some explosive jiu-jitsu. The girl is a real artist. I believe this type of expressive freedom and improvisation is what Mind Smash refers to as a state of flow. It is exemplified by Rose. The girl's got flying arm bars coming out her fucking ears, spinning kicks coming out her ass. There was a moment in a fight with Joanne Calderwood where in the midst of getting taken down, mid-air she commits to a fucking armbar. Non-stop, unorthodox attacking from every position baffled her opponents, and each fight ended in the same manner. En route to the finale, Rose tapped more hot ass than some fucking losers do in their entire lives. All 3 fights ended by way of submission. She was the standout fighter of the show and picked up both fight and performance of the season bonuses. It was also an emotional roller coaster. The image of a mentally unstable fighter that Joanna Jędrzejczyk would later try to capitalize on was one Rose ultimately cultivated herself. She was all over the fucking place. Rose wears her heart in her sleeve. Multiple times during the show, she referred to herself as crazy and described in great detail the inner turmoil experienced heading into a fight.
Right before the fight, I go through every emotion that you could think of, even some that you can't even really explain and you can't put into words. Voices inside your head are telling you you suck and then you're great every other second, and you kind of feel like a crazy person.
And so her victories on the show were a triumph in a number of ways. She battled her own self-doubt and crippling nerves. She defeated the number 2 seed Joanne Calderwood. And she did it all with style and creativity. A spectacular campaign for the youngest fighter in the competition. However, Ultimate Fighter winner she wasn't to be. Rose got beaten in the finale by tournament favorite and Invicta champion Carla Esparza, who was crowned the first UFC strawweight champion. Rose quickly began working her way back towards the belt. She followed that loss up with 3 consecutive wins over Angela Hill, Paige Van Zant, and Tecia Torres, which put her in a likely title eliminator against the undefeated Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I mean, what the fuck are they doing with the names over there? Namajunas, Jędrzejczyk, Kowalkiewicz. Making this video has given me a whole new appreciation of the name Patrick Joseph Barry. I mean, keep it fucking simple. Jesus Christ. Anyway, it was an amazing fight, a fight of the night, but one that Rose ultimately lost by close split decision. Now, there's no shame losing to a fighter of Karolina's caliber, but there was a question of whether or not she beat the best Rose Namajunas. Pat Barry was conspicuously absent from her corner. Rose was vague in her explanation of the situation and not only fanned the flames of speculation regarding their relationship and her focus for the fight. For a full explanation of the situation, fans would have to wait more than a year when Pat Barry appeared on the MMA Hour in one of the most moving interviews I've ever seen. You know, I've said before that Ariel Helwani's best work is those walks he does with the fighters. Fucking superb. They take a stroll, the fighters relax, they open up, and we get to see them in a whole new light. But this interview is just out fucking standing, easily on that level. So it turned out Pat Barry likes a drink, and he likes his prescription pills. In fact, Pat drank so much booze, the guy's fucking asshole exploded. Now, I like a drink myself, but I've never even heard of that. I didn't even realize that was a possibility. I'm not going to give you a play-by-play unless Ariel Helwani wants to forward me the photos, what he got in his phone. But suffice to say, it got fucking ugly. There was blood everywhere. Poor guy might as well have stuck a grenade up his ass by the sound of things. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but when your asshole explodes, all over the fucking place. You know, that's the body's subtle way of telling you you're fucking up. That's your asshole's way of screaming, Mayday, Mayday. Whatever the fuck you're doing out there, stop. This is now a medical matter for a doctor. Unfortunately, Pat Barry's asshole wasn't the only one who objected to his unhealthy living. It was tearing Rose Namajunas apart and taking a serious toll on her career. Now, I cannot speak highly enough for this interview. You know, I love this sport. And initially, I loved it for the sport, the martial arts, the violence, the technique, the excitement. But the main reason I love it now is because it's such a tremendous platform for humanity and humanity's themes. And nowhere is that exemplified more than Pat Barry and Thug Rose. They both wear their heart on their sleeve. You don't have to go digging. They're happy to share who they are with the world. And on this occasion, it was funny, sad, heartbreaking, heartwarming, and moving all at the same time. The MMA landscape is a lot richer because of people like this, who are willing to share their humanity. The very fucking thing that keeps me hooked on this sport. Pat's alcoholism finally came to a head when he was in Minnesota, helping Brock train for the Hunt fight. Presumably that involved a lot of standing around holding a syringe while Brock pulled down his fucking underpants. Anyway, one night Pat went out to get a pizza, he got drunk, got in some kind of altercation, and ended up in his cell for the night. That's just the way booze is, one of the quickest ways to fuck your whole life up. The next day Pat got out, and Brock told him to go home. But when he did, he found an empty house. The final straw. Rose had had enough. And that's the real tragedy of the story. You know, if you go back, for as long as we even knew about Rose, Pat Barry always championed her. He always believed in her. He believed she was destined to be a champion, even when she had virtually no experience. And for her part, she always spoke about Pat like he was a rock of support. He was a big part of what inspired her to get into the sport.
And then I met, a guy like, Pat Barry, my fiance, and then I met guys like Anthony Pettis and Eric Schaefer, who were, in the UFC at the time. It inspired me that even though not a lot of women were doing it at the time, I saw an opportunity to make it bigger. And that's when I met him, and I saw that he was doing it for a living instead of just a hobby. So, yeah, like I said, that inspired me to do that myself.
He was in a corner from the beginning.
How do you prepare for that first match? Tell me about that.
My first MMA fight?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I had Pat in my corner since day one, and
when she spoke about self-doubt and negative emotions, it was Pat who had lifted her up.
Pat Barry's my fiance. Pat is extremely important for me in my life. He's always lifting me up when I tend to knock myself down, and he's been my coach since the beginning.
When she spoke about abuse, it was Pat who had helped her overcome it, face her demons, and get to a point where she could talk about it.
And then also, when somebody's abusing you, they make you feel like it's your fault, and they use tactics to make you feel guilty and make you feel like you deserve it when you don't. My fiance now, Pat really gave me the courage to talk about it. And then after a while, I felt like pressure off of my shoulders, and my life was changing rapidly because of that. And maybe, this could be an inspiration to other people in order to kind of just bring awareness about it and know that this stuff is way more common than people would think.
And beyond that, Pat had so much belief in her that at an early stage, he told Rose, all you gotta do is train. You will never have to work. I'll support you. Because you're going to be a champ.
I wouldn't be around me either. Because I'm a fucking liar. I'm just a piece of shit. And I'm not living the right kind of life. And you know what's not fair? Is that she started becoming me. Go back. I'd go so far as to say this. Go back to any of Rose's performances that didn't seem quite right. My fault.
Huh.
It was me. It was me. I was the outside distraction. This guy. Any performance, I mean, I'm not talking about just fighting. I'm talking about any interview that seems off and weird. Anytime, any post that seems off and weird. If anything seemed off and weird, it's my fucking fault.
2 weeks later was Rose against Carolina, and you weren't there. Is that why you weren't there?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But There was also a heartwarming side of this interview. As soon as Pat realized he was on the verge of losing every important thing in his life, he kicked the bad habits. Now, there's a point in this interview where Rose leaves the room to go and grab Kevin, and Pat gets real. Real fucking real.
Yeah, and now that she's down here, man,
Yeah.
I stopped because that's not a good example. That's not a good example for her.
Right.
She can't be a world champion. She won't be a world champion if I'm living the shitty lifestyle that I'm living. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to change up everything, whether she knows it or not. I'm going to stop my shit, and I'm going to get big with it, and I'm going to get strong on everything. And when I do that, she's got two choices. Either divorce me or keep up. And if she keeps up, she's going to be a monster. That girl's going to be a world champion.
Wow.
That girl's going to...
Give me
Yeah.
goosebumps. Look at that.
Wait, hold on. What's this? What's this? What are we looking at? Look at that. Look at
Wow.
that. Full from seed. We grew it.
Well done.
Yeah.
Bravo.
More of these too.
That's Kevin.
That's oh my lord.
Shortly after that, Rose gets emotional, as she's inclined to do, and we see what's important to her, what she values in her life.
So you're alone in the house. She goes off and fights. How do you get her back?
I don't even know.
Well, because I knew the approach that I had and I knew that Pat was the missing link for that fight. And not to say that also my reasoning behind why I was fighting at that moment, it was just a distraction for me. It's just better than facing my own reality. But sorry. I don't know. I just love this guy, but I don't know. And I just realized that if I'm not doing it with we've been bouncing around a lot, and I've never really had a place to call home, and I feel like I have a home now, not just with an actual house, but my coaches and this guy, and if I can't do it with them, then I don't want to do it, because it's more about the journey and just the experiences that we have with each other, and that makes it all the best roller coaster ever,
Now, I've been watching this sport for a long time, and that's easily the most moving interview I've ever seen. There's just no way around it. This is just a nice MMA romance. It's a regular Rosie Owen Barriette. If you can watch this interview and it doesn't move you, you either don't have a heart or you don't have a soul. There's just something wrong with you. You're what psychologists like to call a worthless piece of shit. I've previously mentioned the other main place I go to get a dose of humanity, and that's movies. I love movies. Sorry, I love good movies. But I flat out fucking refuse to go to a movie theater. I download most movies, not because I'm a fucking mooch. If I thought there was even a chance I was going to enjoy a movie, I'd happily pay for it. I'd throw my fucking money at it. That's what I want. But that is so seldom the case. Most of the time when I go to the movies, after the first 15 minutes, I feel trapped. Trapped inside the mind of a fucking retard. A director or a writer who is just not in touch with humanity. I'm sitting there thinking, Jesus Christ, give me something. Give me something interesting. Fucking move me. I refuse to pay for the privilege of feeling trapped inside the mind of a fucking moron. That ain't happening. I download movies so that I can watch the first 10 minutes, switch it off, delete it, empty my trash, and never, ever think about it again. There's a couple notable exceptions every year. Most of them are shit. But in terms of humanity, mixed martial arts will never let you down. Thank God for MMA. And thank God for music. Jesus Christ. Another thing that will never let you down. Anyway, long story short, Pat resolved to be a better man. To once again become a rock of support rather than a fucking weight around her neck. Rose took him back and the writing was already on the wall. By the time of this interview, Rose had already bounced back from a loss to Carolina with a stunning victory over the karate hottie, Michelle Waterson. A devastating head kick knockdown followed by a swift submission, which propelled Rose into a second shot at the strawweight belt. And it could not have come at a better time. Rose finally got all her ducks in a row. Her personal life was in order. She had the stable home she always wanted. She had a tight-knit camp, a close circle of coaches she trusted implicitly. And she was maturing as a fighter. This was Rose coming into her prime. So it was finally time to see what this scrappy, creative, highly emotional, noble fucking savage could really do.
'Cause this is fucked up, fucked up. People get crushed like biscuit crumbs. I'm laid down in the bitumen. You have tried your best to please everyone, but it just isn't happening. Isn't happening. It is fucked up.
Rose's second title shot came against a fighter who was appropriately calling herself the Boogie Woman. 5-time defending champion, a vicious striker who had not only torn the division asunder, but held wins over the last 2 women to beat Rose. She fucking brutalized the division, messed girls up. She was also a woman who hoped to capitalize on the image Rose herself had cultivated, that of an emotional, mentally unstable fighter, a woman incapable of handling the pressure that Joanna Jędrzejczyk had become accustomed to applying. There was some pretty ruthless, personal trash talking in the build-up.
Hey, listen to yourself. You didn't want to do media. You didn't want to do extra media. How you want to be a champion and deal with all of the things? You know what? You are not stronger mentally. You are mentally unstable, and you are broken already. And I will break you in the fight. This country is an amazing. This country has been amazing to me. I think you have some personal problems, and I will show you what's your problem. Okay? You're never gonna be a champion.
The fun part now. I'm a boogeyman for Rose. What? Her fiancé, he's a big pussy. He said to my team members that they are bitches. You don't do this, and you don't play with me, because you don't wanna to meet a boogie woman. Good, how are you? Cuckoo. So you know, let your fiancé know that he cannot call my people bitches, okay? Because you are his bitch, and he is a bitch. So please, let him know, okay? After this fight, you will respect me more than you can even fucking imagine. I will bring you pain. Boogie Woman is coming tomorrow, and she doesn't know what's coming. 6 title defenses. I will tie Ronda Rousey's record, break the record on 7 fights. And I have a surprise for you guys. Don't blink tomorrow. Believe me, I put on such a great camp. Boogie Woman is coming for you, Rose!
The Boogie Woman, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for the champion. Thank you.
In an interview after the fight, Rose would explain that part of the strategy was to not react to Joanna, and thus get inside the champion's head, who was used to women taking the bait, fighting fire with fire, and getting overly emotional.
Not at all, because I envisioned that happening, and I was actually looking forward to her trying to put something in my face and show her that that's not going to affect me, and it made me, I don't know, gave me strength.
Even when Joanna put her fist in her face. Now, whatever you want to say about it, the image of Joanna calmly kissing her fist and placing it on Rose's lips is just fucking badass. What a cool move. Rose just fucking stood there. Glorious face-off. In retrospect, it was obvious, but at the time, it was tricky to tell if Rose was intimidated and submissive or exercising self-control and discipline. Either way, Joanna's title reign was so impressive, there was a sense of a lamb being sent to the slaughter. You know, Joanna Jędrzejczyk was an outstanding champion, and for a while, she was universally loved. But by the time this fight came around, she had become so preoccupied with bravado and the image of the Boogie Woman that in order to get to Joanna's humanity, there'd be so much excavation involved, you'd want to be a fucking archaeologist. And so at the weigh-in, when Rose was whispering the Lord's Prayer, she wasn't the only one praying. I mean, I'm not religious, but I was saying a fucking thug rosary for Thug Rose. But lamb to the slaughter she was not. Rose went in there and Molly whopped the fuck out of her ass. It was brutal. Rose's performance was straight up fucking flawless. Incredible use of angles and unpredictable footwork. Light in her feet stalking Joanna, but not wild and aggressive. Not the emotional Rose from earlier in her career. This was a patient, composed, cerebral Rose. Joanna was whiffing. Rose explodes. Joanna recovered, but Rose quickly caught her again with another vicious left hook and closes show with some brutal ground and pound. And as soon as she got her hands on the belt, she set about taking a division in a new direction.
Hello. You know, I've said before, leading up to this fight, that I feel like it's, you know, a time for a new era in this, you know, sport. I think we have a great opportunity as fighters and athletes to be good role models, you know. Like I said, I'm by no means perfect, you know, but I think we could try. And yeah, it's just hard, you know. Like I used to fight with hate, and sometimes, you know, there's been a lot of aggression in my past, growing up and stuff. But that's just because I was hurt, you know, myself, and so I learned that love is such a more sustainable energy to draw from than hate.
What a refreshing message, and nobody better than Rose Namajunas to champion it. Another fighter victorious on the same card was TJ Dillashaw. For me, that was somehow appropriate because there's striking similarities in the trajectory of their careers. They both entered the Ultimate Fighter house with very little experience. They both had outstanding campaigns, but ultimately lost in the finale. Both fighters bounced back with 3 and 4 consecutive wins before they were ultimately derailed by split decision. Both fighters followed that up with an emphatic victory that catapulted them into a title fight against the scariest motherfucker in the history of their respective divisions. And although they both appeared like lambs to the slaughter, they destroyed that seemingly unbeatable champion with a near flawless fucking performance, confusing the champion with awkward angles and unpredictable footwork. And so now, 3 years after TJ smashed the fuck out of Barao in a rematch, Rose found herself in an almost identical situation, having to prove that the greatest performance of her career wasn't a fluke or a bad day at the office for the champion.
Joanna, I think, is the fight that everybody's most excited about. I think it's the perfect opportunity to really seal the deal. And obviously, you know, I've proved that I'm the best in the world that night, but I'm excited to do it again on April 7th.
Anyone can win a one-round fight.
Shadow box, finish when you're ready.
You know, you can get caught with a shot and get hurt, or you can get caught in a submission. But over a long period of time, the superior fighter usually comes out on top. We want to see what happens in a 5-rounder.
To her credit, Joanna dealt with the loss incredibly well. Coming into the rematch, she seemed determined, single-minded, and to be pretty much over the loss.
Are you just ready to put that first fight behind you and, in your mind, make things right in the rematch?
I did that already a long time ago, and I changed as a fighter, and you are going to see second version of Joanna, the champion. I was, like I said before, I was the champion for a reason, and I will prove that on Saturday. My game changed. Watch it.
She also appeared to have been somewhat humbled by Rose and dropped the bullshit boogie woman persona. Her ability to move on and get right back into the hunt after such a devastating loss was impressive, a true champion. For her part, Rose still wasn't buying into the bullshit. are succumbing to the trappings of a sport that pedestalizes champions, she still wasn't placing any demands on herself, other than to simply be herself.
Do you think you need this win to solidify to let everybody know that wasn't a fluke?
All I need is to be myself, and that's all that matters. You know, I'm like a tree. Like my leaves might change color, but my roots are the same.
Rose also has an unusual acceptance of the unpredictable nature of her profession and has made peace with the fact that she could lose any given fight. She's not concerned with cultivating an image of an invincible machine.
Is it hard to put yourself back in the shoes of the person who's going for the belt when you see the belt every day and it's around you, you're holding it?
What I think makes it even easier is making it not about the belt. You know, making it so that I know my purpose for fighting, and it's to change the world. But you know, if I'm not meant to be the champion, then I'm not. But I believe I am, and I believe I'm the better fighter, and we'll just have to let God decide what's going to happen.
This was a fight about a legend looking for redemption. While Rose looked to solidify her status as the best strawweight in the world, there was a lot on the line, especially for Joanna. And at UFC 223, she brought her A game. The fight was a real tactical battle. From the opening bell, Rose was again causing problems with movement. Most of the big shots in the first round were Rose tagging Joanna and then just sliding out of range, until the last 10 seconds where Joanna landed a serious right hand and they ended the round swinging for the fucking fences. In the second, Rose really started to pick Joanna apart. She looked a different class, more composed, more patient, more cerebral. Any doubt about the first fight was laid to waste. Rose was outstriking a multiple-time Muay Thai champion. The fruits of her labor with Trevor Whitman and Pat Barry were undeniable. World fucking class. Early in the third, Rose seemed to stun Joanna, but Jędrzejczyk wasn't dead yet. Joanna began to open up with leg kicks, and it completely changed the complexion of the fight. In rounds 3 and 4, Jędrzejczyk largely stayed on the outside, chopping Rose's lead leg, taking her mobility away, stifling her movement. Rose appeared to have no answer. She was slowing down. It had turned into Joanna Jędrzejczyk's fight. Heading into the final round, it appeared to be 2 apiece. Everything at stake would be decided on a single round. In a corner, Trevor Whitman calmly told Rose to go out there and have fun. And Rose did just that. She went out there and immediately started landing big shots. Left hook, wicked lead uppercuts. Now it was Joanna who had no answer. With 30 seconds in the clock, Rose landed a beautiful takedown, and the bout ended with her in control. A great showing from the former champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk. But Rogan was exactly right in the post-fight interview. Thug Rose essentially won a kickboxing fight with one of the best kickboxers to ever compete in MMA. And still, Thug Rose Namajunas. Rose retained her belt in a performance that removed all remaining doubt about who the greatest fighter in the division truly is. After the fight, there was a real sense of relief of having come through such a competitive fight and such a turbulent fight week. We all know Mystic Mac has been smoking some mystic crack, and Rose seemed happy to put the whole thing behind her.
You know, I don't know, it shook me up just because it was such a, like, I didn't know how far it was going to escalate. You know, all the guys inside, they wanted to fight back, and they wanted to go, you know, jump out of the bus, but I'm like, I don't know if they gonna open the door and they gonna all come in, and who, you know, they're obviously not directly after me, but I'm just caught in this scenario, so I don't know. My imagination goes crazy, and just through all the things that I've been through in the past, I know that anybody could have a gun or a knife, or, you know, we don't know, and so I jumped to the negative pretty quickly, and so yeah, there was a lot of thoughts going into this fight, but I'm just grateful to be in one piece, and to be happy, healthy, and safe.
You know, Rose always talks about the journey, and it is something. She came from a concrete jungle. She grew up surrounded by dysfunction, mental illness, and was a victim of abuse. Despite that, Through music and martial arts, she channeled her energy in a positive direction. Rose eventually found the stable home she yearned for and a team she trusts implicitly. From there, she became the greatest strawweight in the fucking planet, toppling a monster in the process, becoming a tremendous ambassador for the sport. Whatever way you cut it, that is quite the fucking journey.